When danger reared its ugly head, he bravely turned his tail and fled.
Music. Music is a form of art that defines us and makes us human. And it had for centuries as it developed over time. Now movies try to show us how different the tunes and the hits were in the past. It sets the vibe of the story. But how accurate is it really? And can we tell how music really sounded in the past? So let's focus on European medieval times in this video. As far as I'm concerned, there are two problems with recreating music from the past. Problem number one is discovering all the instruments in one piece so we can learn how they were built, how they were played, and how they sounded. But even if we solve that, the second problem is about the music, right? So without written songs and compositions, we can only guess what kind of genres and styles musicians were into. Now, for the important bit, how do directors and producers deal with these problems in the movies? And how accurate are they really? So let's check out examples of some troubadours and bards. Now it's important to remember that the sort of common people music or, medieval pop music is much harder to find . Than, for example, church compositions which were kept in libraries by monks. Wandering musicians didn't really write their songs down. The Palestinalied or the Palestine song, composed by Walter von der Vogelweide in the early 13th century, is one song where we get to hear the actual melody. It's a crusade song. But how do modern filmmakers present popular music of olden times?
What for the eye is the point of no return. After everything we did, we saw you turn.
Oh, let's celebrate, lasses and lads. Where once were contenders, now are befrienders. Let's celebrate, lasses, celebrate, lasses.
From the short clips, we can clearly hear that the so-called medieval music in the movies and series sounds quite different from authentic recreations. It's definitely written in a modern songwriting style. But what about the Vikings, as we had quite a few portrayals of them in recent years? We can find the oldest kept piece of written music in the Danish Codex Runicus, which is a manuscript of Scandinavian law of Nordic law.
The musical notations were also written with runes, which is very unusual, because everything that was written in ink around 1150 and up was written by using the Roman alphabet.
As you can see from the picture, it's just a single verse. It's a melody, but it gives us a hint of how the Norse music could have sounded. The music in the series try to match the vibe, but of course with modern treatment. And even though it may not be entirely accurate, I think, right, we all agree that the vibe is there. and the musical representation in the series fits. At least, it sounds authentic to me. It's also helpful that there are reconstructed manuscripts, as we saw in the other video. But even when other people ask about Norse written songs, the answer is that there isn't much out there. They didn't write things down, only some runestones, so we can only imagine that most of the melodies, songs and chants were memorized and passed on orally. But I reckon it's safe to assume that they would have their shanties and song poems and tunes they listen to in the evenings. Chants, especially monastery or church ones, are significant and probably the most studied by historians. And it helps that there are manuscripts of them, like at the end of Codex Calixtinus from the 12th century. Now, reading through what the old church fathers thought of music, well, they weren't too keen on musical instruments as they were worried about the pagan influences. Psalms, chants and singing were right in the eye of God, but flute playing and dancing, not so much. There is a quote, "Of useless arts there is harp playing, dancing and flute playing, of which, when operation ceases, the result disappears with it." And indeed, according to the word of the apostle, the result of this is destruction. So in movies we mostly get the singing. And because filmmakers can use these old compositions for reference, we can hear that when it comes to religious music, the representation is usually on point. But what about the music of the medieval courts, the jesters, the performances for the kings and queens? The Cantigas de Santa Maria are still being studied. These are 420 poems with the music. All were composed during the reign of the King of Castile, Leon and Galicia in the 13th century, Alfonso X. Probably written by the musicians and poets at his court, although a few have his name too in the credits. In the movies, well, it's hit and miss.
What else could he be but a jester? A jester? A jester? A funny idea, a jester. No butcher, no baker, no candlestick maker, and me with the look of a...
Some of it can be quite authentic, but more often than not, the needs of the story take over and the music is made to fit the narrative. And last but not least, let's listen to some Slavic tunes and how do my ancestors fare in the musical arts. Bogu Rodzica is supposed to be the song that the knights sang before the Battle of Grunwald in 1410 and a couple of other battles. Is it really true? Well, we can't know for sure, but historians agree that it could have been a sort of motivational song before the fight. But there isn't much written Slavic medieval music, so it was probably memorized and passed on word of mouth before any manuscripts like Bogu Rodzica started to appear. But we know they used various wind instruments like flutes, they used percussion, they used strings, and I'm not going to lie, even with the Hollywood treatment, it's pretty good.
Что с вами? Что не ходили плясать?
So it's safe to say that some of the greatest hits of medieval music would not work for modern audiences, even when movies or series claim to be as authentic as possible. As we have heard, there are moments like in the Vikings or with especially church music portrayals that we get some resemblance of what the music industry was like in olden days. But as far as movies go, I wouldn't use them for historical research. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe.